It's a pleasure to have you here. Brian Downey's Alive and Dangerous. I guess most of the people know who Brian Downey is, but for those who don't know his name, he's the original drummer of Thin Lizzy, or was for every. Yeah, he played drums on every Thin Lizzy album ever, and on every Phil Lynott solo album. Yeah, you know, I'm also a big Thin Lizzy fan. If I had a time capsule and someone would ask me, you can go to one concert back in the 70s, like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, or whoever, I would choose Thin Lizzy, I guess. So it's a real pleasure to have you here today. And
thanks, Morris.
it's a big moment in my radio career, and I'm a bit excited, I have to admit, and I hope I'm not bothering you with too many fan questions.
Okay.
So let's start. How are you, and how's the current tour running with Alive and Dangerous?
We're playing great. Yeah, everything's going really well. We're really enjoying it. Nice to be back in Germany again. We're playing tonight, obviously, and everybody's obviously looking forward to it. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to introduce the three guys you have with you? They could be your sons, maybe some of them. I don't know.
Yeah, no, they're not.
Or
no,
maybe
thank
you
God
just
for that. No, on my left here is Phil Edgar on guitar from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Matt Wilson in the middle on bass and vocals from Northern Ireland, and Brian Grace on lead guitar from Dublin, Ireland.
Okay. Their slang is a bit tougher to understand for me, I guess, than yours. Right? From North Ireland, that's...
Yeah, well, there is slight different accents, all right.
That's a special thing, yeah. Okay, could you summarize how that project came into life, or how you stumbled upon these guys?
Well, about 2016, I met Brian Grace, to form a band. And, the idea was to actually form a band based on blues. But then we sort of got talking about it, and Brian suggested maybe... we should ask Matt and Phil from Northern Ireland, because they were playing with a band called the Lowriders, and they were doing sort of Lizzy tribute stuff.
So only two of you were playing in the same band?
Well, Brian did play as well with them,
okay.
At the Vibe for Philo in Dublin every year. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of an annual event for Phil Lynott. So I thought, that suggestion was good. So we got Matt and Phil down. Just went through a couple of rehearsals without any real problems at all. All the songs seemed to be pretty spot on. There's no real hassles initially about playing the tunes. So that's really how it started.
Okay. And was it clear from the beginning that you play the whole track list from Live and Dangerous, or?
No, that kind of came later, because the initial idea, I think, was just to, get a band together with, obviously. Lizzy tracks, some blues tracks, some tracks we obviously like. But then the idea was put to us by actually a friend of ours called Grant Nicholas. Maybe we should do something, and he actually came up with the name Alive and Dangerous. Our friend did, and that's when we sort of decided to concentrate on playing the Alive and Dangerous album.
Okay. I guess each one of you is also a great Thin Lizzy fan. Maybe you would like to tell us how you came to Thin Lizzy, how you your first record or whatever, how you fell in love.
Yeah, when I was born in 1990, and in 1991 there was the dedication release, the box set, like the video, all the music videos. And my dad was a massive Thin Lizzy fan, so instead of having children's TV when I was growing up, I had Thin Lizzy music videos. So I just grew up like Thin Lizzy was like it always existed, and I was obsessed with it ever since I had a memory, so thankfully.
Thanks to your father.
Thanks to my dad, I didn't have to learn the hard way,
Well, growing up in Ireland, it's hard to sort of miss Thin Lizzy's music, because that's where it comes from. So whenever I was about 10 or 11, I'd heard the song "The Boys Are Back in Town," and I really liked it. Didn't know anything about the band or what they looked like or X, Y, or Z. Just really liked the sound, and I begged my mum to, help me find the CD, and I found the Jailbreak album, and here we are today.
Oh yeah, I must have been about 12. Now we're going back a few more years than these lads, but my cousin used to mind Phil Lynnett's dog, and I was staying in his house for the summer, so I used to mind the dog, but I didn't really know who Phil Lynott was, so that sort of was the introduction, and then I just got into the music then, you know.
Okay. What's interesting, you said Phil Lynott, and I asked a lot
Or
of
Phil
people.
Lynott.
No, everybody's saying it different. Even in Ireland, when I went to Dublin, I asked the people on the street, "Hey, who's the singer of Thin Lizzy? Phil Lynott or Phil Lynott?" And everybody was saying something else. So I'm really just.
His name is Phil Lynott. It's like it rhymes with lie not. You know, it's
Okay,
it's
so I'm right.
yeah.
Okay, you are nearly 70 now, and you're touring like you
Don't
are
remind
in
me.
your 20s. I think, yeah, you still play 3 shows in a row. Yesterday in Aschaffenburg, the day before in Belgium.
We actually
and
played five in a row last
5 in a
week.
row. All right. What is wrong with you?
Well, yeah, that's good question. You know, and yeah, I try to keep myself fit. You know, you know, I go out walking most evenings for about an hour and a half without fail. You know, hail, rain or snow, as you say in Ireland. So I try to keep myself fit that way. You know, I don't go to the gym, or I don't sort of
You're
do
doing
anything
it like Mick
that, but
Jagger.
I do it like Mick Jagger. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah, like you said, you're playing the whole Life and Dangerous, but you said it's not exactly the track list.
No.
It's not like you're switching from Rosalie to the Cowboy song exactly like it was
No.
on the album.
Not exactly like it, but close enough. You know.
All right. Okay. And did you ever think about maybe playing the whole Black Rose or Jailbreak?
We could do Black Rose. Yeah, we could do that as well. No problem. So, but because it's the 40th anniversary of Live and Dangerous album, that's why
Makes
we're doing
sense.
it.
Maybe
But
on the next tour.
when
then.
it's the 40th anniversary of Black Rose, we might go out and do that.
Nice. I hope
You never
so.
know. Hopefully.
Okay. And what's the plan for the next month? Your tour is
Well,
ending in a few.
Yeah, tomorrow's the last gig. You know, we have 2 more to do tonight and tomorrow, and then we have about maybe a couple of days off, and then we go to Scotland in the UK, and we play a festival there. I'm not sure exactly what's happening after. Do you know what's happening after that? I can't remember exactly.
Playing, the Winter's End Planet Rock Festival on March 8th in Dorset in England.
So those 2 are coming up shortly.
Okay. Do you guys miss Ireland a lot and just saving yourself from one Irish pub to the next, or?
Yeah, no, we don't miss Ireland that much. No, it's great to be playing, you know. So you can only do so much gigs in Ireland, and then you have to leave and come to Germany or
All right.
England or whatever.
There's
But no, we love Ireland, obviously. But you know, we try to minimise our appearances there as much as possible.
Okay. Good. If it's all right with you, I would like to go back to the past
Okay.
with the next few questions.
Yeah, no problem.
If you want to say something, just raise your hand and we hand you the microphone. Yeah. You met Phil Lynott as a schoolboy. Do you still remember the moment? Yeah. What's the first moment you can recall seeing him?
Oh, the first moment of seeing him was in school, all right, but it was just a passing glance, and wasn't even hello or. But the first time I really seen him on stage was I was about maybe 12 years of age, and I was in a place called the Apollo Cinema in Dundrum in Dublin. He was playing with a band called the Black Eagles, and instantly they became my favourite band because they were all from the same area in Dublin that I was from, Crumlin.
But they had a drummer.
And they had a drummer, yeah. But, you know, I was playing in a small band myself in Crumlin. And, you know, we were all kind of impressed with the Black Eagles because they were getting lots of gigs. So I went to see them, and I was really impressed with Phil. Now, he was just singing, he wasn't playing bass. But his stage presence was just incredible. You know, I just could not take my eyes off Phil. Even though there was like a drummer there, I just didn't really pay much attention to the drummer. And Phil was really very impressive. Didn't play bass, but his singing was impeccable.
Okay.
You know, and I just fell in love with the band, and it became my favourite band from Crumlin.
And you also started really early with playing the drums, right?
I did, yeah. I started when I was about 8. My dad was a drummer in a pipe band in Ireland, and there was always sticks around the place, so I just picked him up naturally and started playing on the kitchen table one day. And you know, he said, "Yeah, you know, if you're interested, I'll be able to give you some rudiment lessons," and that's what he did. So I became kind of proficient then after that, and then he reckoned that I should go and get proper lessons. So he sent me to a band called the Fintan Lawler Pipe Band in Dublin, and they were sort of the biggest pipe band in Ireland at the time, you know. So the main guy there was a guy called Joe Merrigan, the main drummer. So he taught me how to play, you know, and he taught me a little bit of, you know, music reading. So it all stayed with me. Yeah.
But I read somewhere that Phil Lynott chased you down later when he was in a new band. He said, "Oh, there was this Brian Downey. I want him back."
Yeah, but that's not exactly right. What happened was the drummer from the Black Eagles decided to leave to join the army. And Phil knew I used to go to the gigs, and he knew I was a drummer. So he came up to me one day in school, and he says, look, there's going to be a vacancy in the Black Eagles very shortly. Our drummer's leaving, And he said, what you should do is apply for the job, there's going to be an ad in the paper, an advert. Excuse me. And so I got the Evening Herald in Ireland and saw the ad and applied for it. And I got a letter back saying the audition would be maybe next Saturday. Bring your drums. So I went that Saturday. I went, brought the drums down, and I discovered there was 4 or 5 other drummers there waiting to play as well. So it wasn't just me, So the audition was for 6 drummers. But fortunately, they asked me to play a song called "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks.
And you loved the Kinks.
And I loved the Kinks at that particular time. I had the album, I had a single, and I knew the song, and I could play it. Nice. So that was kind of obviously impressed them. And that's how I got the gig in the Black Eagles.
Okay, nice. There are so many Lizzy songs you can't really imitate. The style is too unique. Even if another band plays them, that can only be Thin Lizzy. What can you tell us about the songwriting back then? Did you just jam in the rehearsal room, or could you come up with some song and say, yeah, it could go in that topical direction? Or was Phil the kind of guy who said, no, I want to write the lyrics alone? I don't know. Yeah,
the second part was more like it. No, Phil would be very, very, straightforward with you. He'd come up with the idea. He'd put the idea to you. He'd leave a little bit of space there for, suggestions. But mainly he'd have the melody worked out. He'd even have the drum beat worked out in his head. So he'd be throwing suggestions at you from day one. So the first album basically was Phil Lynott playing. We played all these songs, apart from one song by Eric Bell called Raygun. But all the rest was Phil's, and all these ideas were on the first album.
Okay. Even your own style is very unique, of course, and I found it interesting to see that the 5 albums that inspired you the most, I read it on classicrock.net, I think. There's a lot of blues, John Mayall, Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Hendrix, Cream, Albert King, a lot of blues. Yeah. And I guess the most would say, if you ask them on the street, hey, what kind of music do Thin Lizzy play? Hard rock. Some of them even heavy metal, maybe. Was that maybe, were you ever unhappy with the musical path that Thin Lizzy chose?
Oh no. I mean, before I joined Thin Lizzy, I did play in a blues band, so that's all those blues references came from that period. But I knew Phil wasn't really into blues as such, but he knew about blues. But mainly, Phil, according as far as I was concerned, was a songwriter and a singer. And he was writing some incredible songs when I initially, when the band initially formed with Eric Bell, Phil's songwriting was really coming on leaps and bounds, because don't forget he was writing as well in later on the Black Eagles, but none of those survived, none of those tracks survived, unfortunately. But he was writing from an early stage.
In 1977, Thin Lizzy was the support of Queen on their A Day at the Races tour. Can you share any memories from back then? I don't know, drinking beer with Brian May and Freddie Mercury or whatever.
I know, Phil was and myself was friends with Brian May, and I think he when the tour was suggested, we were the first band that Brian May recommended.
Nice,
which is nice. So the actual tour started, and. We actually had Gary Moore on that tour because Brian Robertson couldn't make the tour.
That was the first time Gary Moore played with?
That was the second time with Queen.
Okay.
The first time we played as a 3-piece with Gary.
Okay.
But this particular tour, Brian Robertson had an injury to his hand, so he couldn't make it. So we had to get Gary Moore in to play. And it was the best thing we ever did because his playing was just incredible, that tour, he was just amazing.
Okay. And can you recall any other memories from Backstage with Freddie Mercury?
Oh yeah, well, Freddie used to keep himself to himself. He wasn't really that sociable as such, but he was friendly. Mm-hmm. but he wouldn't go partying with us that much at all, you know.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. I guess everybody here would agree that the golden age of Thin Lizzy was the 70s, maybe. Yeah, for me, who joined this world in 1988, the 70s is it's a decade. It's really mysterious somehow and fascinating. And of course, when it comes to rock music, it's the decade I would love to go back to if I could. Is there any memory where you say, "Wow, I'm so glad I experienced that"? Of course, the tour with Queen. Anything else that comes to your mind?
Oh yeah, the 70s. Like, you know, I mean, really, I grew up in the late 60s, and all those 60s bands were a big influence. But going into the 70s, I mean, that carried on into that period as well. You know, the idea of getting a record deal early in our career was unheard of when we started first. I mean, there was very few bands were signed up. And going to England and getting signed up by Decca Records in the early 70s was just an amazing experience. And the next amazing experience, in fact, was appearing on Top of the Pops for Whiskey in the Jar. That was an incredible experience, because we used to sit in Dublin in Ireland and watch the BBC Top of the Pops programme and wish we were there playing on this thing. So that came true, and that was an incredible experience.
I can imagine, okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, you've played on every Thin Lizzy album and on both Lined solo albums. One could say you've left your footprints in the history of rock music. And you've witnessed a lot of guitar heroes come and go. And like you said, Gary Moore, sounds like you were a big fan of him.
Well, yeah.
Or still are. What was your favorite twin guitar duo? It was not Brian Robertson and Scott
no,
Gorham.
it would be Brian Robertson and Scott Gorham.
Yeah.
The original duo would have been absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know Gary Moore did play with Scott, but I mean, I think everybody agrees the initial band with Robbo in there was the ultimate band, yeah.
Black Rose, a rock legend, is definitely one of the best Lizzy albums, and the first thought would be, of course, because Gary Moore joined them and brought a lot of energy and inspiration to them.
Yeah.
Would you subscribe that like that?
I would, yeah. I think when Gary came in, he certainly changed the band a bit, you know. You know, I mean, obviously Phil and Gary started collaborating around that time as well. But the Black Rose album was in Phil's mind for months before we actually recorded it.
Well, okay.
So that idea was floating around for ages.
And is there any special memory you remember with Gary Moore?
Yeah, well, you know, when Gary came in, I mean, I was a big friend of Gary's anyway. We all were, me and Phil especially. But when Gary came in, he brought in obviously a new dimension, and was like, you know, it was a bit like when Eric Bell was in the band. We were back as a, you know, Irish kind of a band. Yeah. You know, I know Robbo was Scottish, but we were an Irish band with Gary there. It was made it more Irish even. And his influences on that album is just immense, you know, really immense. I mean, the solos are just incredible. Not saying that, you know, Robbo's solos weren't, but I mean, Gary did put his stamp on it, you know, he really did. Okay. And it turned out to be one of the best albums we ever recorded.
Yeah. I agree on that. The end of Thin Lizzy is probably one of the most dramatic and most painful endings of a band in rock history, and you always stick to Line It until the end. You even went on tour with Grand Slam after Thin Lizzy was over. It must have been a really chaotic and maybe dark time, I don't know. How did you experience this back then? Well,
you just mentioned Grand Slam. I didn't actually play with Grand Slam. I just rehearsed with them. I didn't actually go on tour. There was a guy called Robbie Brennan who played drums with them. Right. But I initially was asked to play by Phil. I discovered that, you know, during the rehearsals that we didn't have enough material to play the tour. We were supposed to play a tour of Ireland. And I got cold feet, and I said to Phil, you know, look, we don't have many songs. He said, we'll just go out and jam. So I really wasn't too into that. So I just sort of stepped aside and let Robbie Brennan take over. But it was a very dark time. You know, that whole period was very sad. There was a 2-year break between Thin Lizzy breaking up and Phil passing away. And for some reason, that 2-year period, I kind of lost contact with Phil. I think we all did, and he was on the road with Grand Slam, playing a lot of festivals and gigs everywhere. And really, what he should have done was after Thin Lizzy broke up, was take time out, you know, to rest up. But knowing Phil, he didn't do that. He just wanted to keep playing, but he really should have stopped and went in and got help.
Yeah.
but he didn't.
Okay. If the next question is too inappropriate, please just tell me. But when Phil Lynott died in 1986, you did not only lose the singer of the biggest band you ever played in, you also lost a really good and old friend.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that grief back then?
Well, grief was awful. It took me years to recover. And I don't think people I know, a lot of people didn't recover. His mom never really recovered fully from it. You know, it was just a very dark period. And maybe 4 years later, I came kind of out of it, you know, feeling a better person, in fact, having gone through it, I think. Having said that, it's just a dreadful period of you know, your life when somebody close to you dies like that. Takes a long time for the grief to eventually subside.
Okay. And if you could go back in time just for a few weeks, maybe, which era would that be? There must be an album or a tour, whatever, that was just overwhelming, surreal. Would it be Black Rose then? Or?
It would have been, well, Black Rose would have been one of them, but you know, I mean, some of the early tours we did on the Decca period albums were very, very good tours. You know, we did lots of tours in Europe, especially in Germany as well. And some of those gigs were just incredibly magic. That's the only way I can describe it. Because we weren't playing long together, and we discovered when we did start playing together, we had something that maybe no other band in Ireland had.
Or no other band in the world.
Maybe in the world, yeah, at that particular time. But we kind of guessed that after a while we were, you know, very close-knit musicians, and, you know, that obviously came across on the first 3 albums. But that particular period was special for me. But there was obviously great times later with Queen and, as you said, Bachman Turner Overdrive and all those tours in America. They were fantastic times.
All right. When you were on tour or when you were on stage, did you like the songs more that go really straightforward, like The Boys Are Back in Town or the Rocker or whatever, or more the ballads like Still in Love with You? Or
I think I've got a kind of, my favourites are a mixture of both the ballads and the rockers. So I could, maybe it's because I'm so close to it, but I just like all the soft songs Phil used to write, all the romantic kind of songs. But there again, when he'd write a rocker, he'd make it so good that, you know, it was just irresistible, you know, and it was really fun to play, and it still is fun to play those songs, you know.
Okay, back to Brian May from Queen. He worked together with the filmmakers of Bohemian Rhapsody, and as we heard, there will be a movie about Phil Lynott. And I just thought, could be that Brian Downey is working with the filmmakers. I don't know. Can you tell us anything?
Well, unfortunately, that seems to have been shelved. Unfortunately, I just heard Jim Sheridan pulled out of the idea.
Oh.
Now, whether it's going to be resurrected again, I'm not really sure. But as it stands right now,
I didn't know that.
The film has been shelved. Yeah, but there is a documentary apparently that's going to kind of take the place of the movie. But there again, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to go, because really, I think everybody was depending on the movie coming out. But unfortunately.
And if they call you and need your help?
Oh yeah, you know, I'd have absolutely no problem doing that. But I think Jim Sheridan, as we speak, hasn't, you know, replied to any of the emails. But you know, that could be resurrected again, hopefully.
Okay. A question frequently asked by Thin Lizzy fans is if there is any video footage for the live. Is there anything that...
You know, that's a very good question. I mean, I know back then, you know, video cameras and whatever, right, weren't really all that prevalent. Yeah. You know, whether a fan somewhere around the world might have it, who knows, but it'd be great to see it. But I haven't seen anything since, you know.
All right. What are your thoughts about the American kid of Thin Lizzy, the Black Star Riders?
Yeah, you know, I mean, they do kind of well. You know, I played with Thin Lizzy, and I did the demos for Black Star Riders. But when it was put to me that we should change the name from Thin Lizzy to another name, I kind of opted out of that. I didn't particularly want to go there. But the initial idea was just to keep Thin Lizzy together. But then when the idea was put to us to record some new music, and I just thought maybe that was going a bit too far. So I think that's when the that particular Thin Lizzy management then came up with the idea of changing the name. But I didn't agree with that, so I just, again, stepped aside and let somebody else come in and take my place. So that's exactly what happened.
Okay, and are you still in contact with Scott Gorham? Or?
Oh, yeah. We every so often we call each other up, and same with Brian Robertson, you know.
Nice.
But not every week, you know, maybe every 6 months or something like that, every year.
You meet in an Irish pub and drink some
Yeah,
pints.
yeah. We could do that, but I don't drink anymore, so I'll be drinking coffee or tea. So.
Okay, that's fine. Besides the Black Star Riders, you are maybe the main figure when it comes to keeping the legacy of Thin Lizzy alive.
Right.
There are some things that no Thin Lizzy fan ever understands. For example, why Thin Lizzy are still not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Yeah, that was actually mentioned to me last night by a fan. I've really no idea. I mean, we actually turned up there about 5-6 years ago when we did a reunion tour. We were in America, and we went along to see the Rock and Roll Museum. The guy brought us in for a tour. You know, it was fantastic. But whether we're going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is anybody's guess. It's a long time now. We've been sort of on the list, but no sign of us being inducted yet.
I think it's really hard to take this institution serious.
I think so too. Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then back to Alive and Dangerous. Maybe you could hand over the microphone to them again. How does it feel for you to be on stage with a legend like Brian Downey? I mean, you're taking place, in how do I say that? How does it feel for you? I mean, if someone would have told you 10 years ago, you will play with the original Thin Lizzy drummer, you will be on stage and go on tour through Europe.
Yeah.
What
I would have told them they were mad. I can't. I'm living the dream. Like, it's all downhill from here, you know.
So every morning when you wake up, you think, "Oh, damn it, it's real." Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love playing with Brian. It's a. There's nobody in the world that plays like Brian, and Lord knows many have tried and absolutely brutalized the Thin Lizzy music over the years without Brian. And I've been at the gigs watching them murder it. You know, it's absolute. Without Brian, you know, I don't think anybody can really authentically play Thin Lizzy music, you know, and he's got the touch and the feel that, like, to be honest, I don't think any other drummer in the world has, and it's an absolute privilege to be playing with him.
Thank you, sir.
So I guess that touch is somehow infecting the other musicians, like the drummer is keeping together the band, of course. Yeah. But I only saw a few live videos of you, and I was really, my chin was like, oh my goodness. Tonight I will experience you in real life, but yeah, your sound is amazing, and it comes so close to what I know Thin Lizzy must have sounded like back then. Yeah. How does it feel for you?
Well, ultimately...
Oh, the microphone, yeah.
Hello. Ultimately, I learned how to play music, and I learned how to sing listening to Thin Lizzy records. And, like yourself, I was born in the late 80s, and I just turned 30, and it just feels like I've come full circle. The music that inspired me to play and want to be a musician, I'm now getting to play with it. But I would be lying if I said that the first year was very, very intimidating, because you've got big shoes to fill, and ultimately you're playing with one of the guys that wrote the songs. So there's not really a lot of margin for error. But once I got over that, I started to enjoy myself. It was great.
Nice.
Yeah, I suppose like Phil said, he summed it up very, very well. There's no one that can play drums like Brian. Like that shuffle that he has. I mean, it's not a rock. He's got a lot of jazz in there as well, you know. But I've seen a lot of guys try and do it as well, and no one comes close. So, and then being a fan of the music and the songs, and I mean, these guys were all role models to me when I was young, you know. And like Scott and Brian's guitar playing, Eric's, Gary Moore, just unbelievable musicians, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then Thin Lizzy were such a unique band. You know, you watch documentaries on bands like Metallica or any band around the planet, and they always mention Thin Lizzy.
Of course, yeah.
You know, it's so yeah, it's great, and it's very proud that I'm playing with Brian, and you know, and we're Irish as well, you know, and it's
The feeling is mutual on my behalf as well, because, as I said earlier, I mean, I was expecting, you know, a lot of work in the initial rehearsals, and when the guys came down, we just went through 6 or 7 tunes without any stopping. You know, there's no hitches, and that's just a reflection on how good these guys are as musicians as well. So yeah, it's a win-win situation here, I think.
Okay. And is he sometimes a tough band chief? I mean, he knows how the songs have to sound, and if they doesn't sound like it,
and it did sound. It sounded very, very close to the original band, yeah, and it still does.
Okay.
You know.
But I guess it was a lot of hard work.
I think it sort of came very naturally. I mean, we're definitely, our favourite period are the sort of early 70s, all the 70s, you know. And, you know, as guitar players, we try and get those tones all the time. We try and stay away from the heavier sound, sort of going into heavy metal, you know, which a lot of people get that wrong. So, yeah, we try and keep it simple. And yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. And one last question, maybe. I mean, you guys maybe would love to record an album with him. I don't know if that's in the planning. I guess not, because there are so many very good Thin Lizzy albums. But I don't know if you guys are active in songwriting or having anything.
Yeah, we've been writing some material, and we've been in the studio with it, but and trying to shop it around various record labels stuff. But at the moment, we're just happy playing. We do one of the original numbers live, so you'll get to hear that on tonight.
All right. Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, I will be there. Okay. Thank you so much for your time and coming around. And goodbye out there.
Thank you.